All right, good afternoon, good people. Today we're going to be talking about social pyramids in ancient Egypt. But before we do that, we're going to do a little map practice. So go ahead and begin your do now. Take a few minutes and complete questions 1 and 2. When you finish your do now, click continue on the right. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the do now. For question number 1, at which coordinates can the capital of modern day Egypt be found? Now, a few skills that you would need to have remembered from our map teaching. One is that the capital city of a country or a state is typically going to be labeled with this circle and star. That lets you know that this is the capital city. So, the capital city of Egypt is Cairo. All right, latitude. Think latitude, fatitude. So the latitude lines go across. So latitude is going to be between 28 and 32. And it's pretty smack dab between 28 and 32. And so our latitude line here would be 30 degrees north. And then for longitude, it's between 32 degrees east and 28 degrees east, but closer to 32 degrees east. And so we're going to think, okay, right here then, this would be about 31 degrees east. So our coordinates then of the capital city of modern day Egypt could be found at answer choice C, which is 30 degrees north and 31 degrees east. For question 2, 3 different groups of nomads have decided to settle down in Egypt. They set up villages A, B, and C, shown on the map above. Which village do you predict would be the least successful and why? Your sentence, in a complete sentence with an explanation, should have been village B over here in the west. Village B will be the least successful because it's located in the desert and far away from the Nile River, so both transportation and farming will be quite difficult. If you had both of those answers, go ahead and give yourself a pat on the back, and let's keep it on rolling. So today we're going to be talking about social pyramids, and the thing that I want you to be asking yourself throughout this lesson today is, what job would you want to have in ancient Egypt? And our 2 objectives are for scholars to be able to use a social pyramid to explain the wealth and power of different groups in a society, and that scholars will be able to describe roles from at least 3 levels of the ancient Egyptian social pyramid. So, in just a second, what I'm going to have you do is organize the group of 6 people below by placing them in one of the 3 boxes below, with the least power, some power, and the most power. Remember that people in the same position need to be placed in the same box. So on your paper now, in your paper packet, go ahead and place scholar A, B, and C, teacher A and B, and principal into the boxes of most power, some power, least power. When you finish doing that, click continue. All right, go ahead and check yourself. This is what you should have had in the most power box. You should have only had the principal. In some power, you should have had teacher A and teacher B. And in the least power, you should have had scholar A, scholar B, and scholar C. And what I want you to notice here is that societies are also typically organized in this way, where the power is given to the hands of the few. So the most power has the least amount of people. Some power has a decent amount of people. And then the least power, there are a lot of people with very little power in a society. So if you even think about America, the person who has the most power in America would be our president. Now, there's only one president, whereas there's a lot of citizens with very little power that live in all the different cities across the country. But in terms of who has the most power, there's only one president of the entire country. So go ahead now and complete questions 1, 2, and 3 on the bottom of your packet, and then click continue. All right, let's check ourselves. So if you're correct, which box had the most people? You should have selected the least power. Which box had the least amount of people? The most power. And then to complete the statements correctly, it should have said the more power a group has in society, the fewer people it's likely to have. And the less power a group has in society, the more people it is likely to have. And so we're going to look at this a little bit more in detail using what's called a social pyramid. And so a social pyramid is a diagram that shows how much power a social group has in society. The higher up the group is, the more power it has. Normally, the groups with the most power are very, 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 very small. And the groups with the least power are very, 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 very large. So common people, ordinary people, there's a ton of people that are ordinary that have very little power. But people who have a ton of power, that group is very small. Use this diagram to answer the questions coming up. Okay, so now let's take a look at Egypt's social pyramid. If you made a diagram of the different social groups in ancient Egypt, you would find that they make a pyramid shape similar to the one that we've been talking about. At the top would be the king. Now in America, the king is known as the president of the United States. In ancient Egypt, they didn't call him a king, they called him a pharaoh. And the pharaoh was the supreme ruler, but he was at the very top of the pyramid. He had the most power, so the king and his family. Now, beneath that level was a small group of upper class people made up of priests, army commanders, and nobles. Next comes a larger group of skilled middle class people, such as traders, scribes, artisans, and shopkeepers. And then at the bottom was the largest group of farmers and unskilled workers. And so this is the makeup of Egypt's social pyramid. So take this diagram and on your classwork, go ahead and complete questions 1 through 8 using the diagram seen above. Okay, so let's check ourselves. Here we go. For number 1, worked on land that was owned by wealthy people. You should have just had farmers. 2, had more power than scribes, merchants, and artisans. Should have had pharaoh and upper class. Number 3, lived in mud brick houses. That was both farmers and unskilled workers. Had the least power in Egyptian society. That was unskilled workers. Were not buried in pyramids. You should have every single person circled except for Pharaoh. Pharaoh was the only person buried in the pyramid. For number 6, had servants. Should have had Pharaoh and upper class. And 7, lived in crowded cities. Unskilled workers. And then for 8, part of Egypt's social pyramid. Every single person should have been circled. Okay, so now for you to do, go ahead and in your packet, complete today's exit ticket. And then after you've completed today's exit ticket, put it on the corner of your desk for your teacher to pick up and go through and make sure all Edpuzzle videos are complete. And have a great afternoon. Adios.